In the 2023 AL Wildcard Series, the Minnesota Twins swept the Blue Jays. This was their first series win since 2002, and more importantly, that busted the longest playoff losing streak in baseball history, 18 games going back to 2004. The Twins are off the schneid, so let's see who's got the biggest playoff losing streak now. But first, let's look at every team's current losing streak. There are only 3 teams that don't have an active playoff losing streak. One of those teams is obvious. The defending champion Texas Rangers are riding a 3-game winning streak. You also have the Washington Nationals. The last time they made the playoffs was in their World Series year of 2019, winning the last 2 games in Houston, that coming on the heels of losing all 3 games at home. The last one is the Kansas City Royals. They haven't been back to the playoffs since winning the World Series in 2015, winning the last 2 games against the Mets to win the trophy. We have 3 teams that are on a 1-game losing streak, one of them being the New York Mets. Their last playoff appearance was in 2022, and they split the first 2 games of the Wildcard Series against the Padres. But they dropped the winner-take-all game and haven't been back since. The Oakland A's have also only lost 1 straight, their last appearance coming in the 2020 ALDS, and they were able to avoid the Houston sweep but lost the series. The only other team with 1 is the White Sox. They also fell victim to the Astros, this time in the 2021 ALDS. And like the A's, they were able to avoid the sweep but still lost the series. 6 teams are riding a 2-game losing streak. That includes the Philadelphia Phillies. This one hurts. They just had to beat Arizona 1 time at home to win the 2023 pennant, but they dropped both of them. The Braves aren't going to feel sorry for them. The Phillies got them the series before, once again taking back-to-back games at home in the NLDS and sending the Braves home early. The Houston Astros are also riding a 2-game losing streak, taking a 3-2 series lead back home in the 2023 ALCS, but losing the last 2 against the Rangers. We talked about the Minnesota Twins from the start. They busted their 18-game losing streak, but after dropping the last 2 games against the Astros in the 2023 ALDS, they're 11% of the way back to the record. The Cleveland Guardians were riding the high of a walk-off win over the Yankees in the 2022 ALDS, but they failed to close out the series in either of the last 2 games. Last one, the San Francisco Giants had their biggest rivals on the ropes, taking a 2-1 series lead over the Dodgers in the 2021 NLDS. But the Dodgers came back to force a Game 5 and won a thriller to eliminate the 107-win Giants. 5 teams are riding a 3-game losing streak, and that includes the Arizona Diamondbacks. After crushing the Rangers in Game 2 of the 2023 World Series, Arizona dropped all 3 of their home games. Then you got the Seattle Mariners. They got to the 2022 ALDS against the Astros, and they lost all 3 games. They were all very close, but ended up on the wrong side of each one. The Padres also had a nice run in the 2022 playoffs, but after winning Game 2 of the NLCS against the Phillies, they dropped the last 3, all in Philly, and lost the series. The year prior, the Boston Red Sox found themselves with a 2-1 series lead in the 2021 ALCS, but Houston does what Houston does, and grabbed the last 3 games to win the pennant. Finally, the Colorado Rockies are also stuck on 3, winning the 2018 NL Wildcard game against the Cubs, but losing all 3 in their NLDS matchup against Milwaukee. 4 teams have a 4-game losing streak, and let's start with the New York Yankees. All 4 losses came in the 2022 ALCS, where they got totally overpowered by the Astros. The Cubs are also on a 4-game losing streak, and that spans over 3 seasons, starting with the final game of the 2017 NLCS against the Dodgers, then losing that wildcard game against the Rockies in 2018, and the last 2 came from the 2020 Wildcard Series, losing 2 home games against the Marlins. The Pittsburgh Pirates streak also spans over 3 years, these being consecutive. They lost the last 2 games of the 2013 NLDS against the Cardinals, came back and lost the next 2 wildcard games, first to the Giants in 2014, then to the Cubs in 2015. The last team with 4 in a row is the Los Angeles Angels, losing Game 6 of the 2019 ALCS to the Yankees, and then getting swept by the Royals in the 2014 ALDS. Before we get to the teams that made the top 5, I have one more group of 4 that lost 5 in a row. The Milwaukee Brewers won the first game of the 2021 NLDS against the Braves, and then they lost the next 3. They got back to the playoffs in 2023, only to lose both games of the Wildcard Series against Arizona. Their division rivals, the St. Louis Cardinals, also have 5, and this dates back to the 2020 Wildcard Series. They beat the Padres in Game 1 and then dropped the next 2, came back the next year and lost to the Dodgers in the 2021 Wildcard game, then got swept in the 2022 Wildcard Series at home against the Phillies. The Miami Marlins have dropped 5 straight now, and that started with a 3-game sweep in the 2020 NLDS against the Braves, then got swept again in the 2023 Wildcard Series against the Phillies. The last team that's lost 5 in a row is the Tigers. This streak goes back a decade. losing the last 2 games of the 2013 ALCS to the Red Sox, and then getting swept against Baltimore in the 2014 ALDS. They haven't made the playoffs since. Everyone in the top 5 has lost at least 6 in a row, so let's count them down. We have a 2-way tie with 6 losses. Let's start with the Los Angeles Dodgers. From all the success this team's had over the last 11 seasons, this has gotta be their low point. They won 111 games in 2022, won the first game of the NLDS against the Padres, but their offense was shut down over the last 3 games. A stunning, embarrassing loss to a team they had dominated over the regular season. The 2023 Dodgers had a lot of problems with their pitching, but they still won 100 games. All things considered, they did not have a lot of confidence going into the playoffs. Still, I don't think anyone could have expected them to get swept in the NLDS against Arizona. Clayton Kershaw gave up Game 1 in the first inning before the offense could even get to work. But for all the concern over the pitching, it was the offense that failed in this series. They scored 2 runs in every game, losing the last 2 games by a score of 4-2. And there you have a 6-game losing streak spanning over the last 2 seasons. The other team with 6 losses is the Cincinnati Reds. This goes all the way back to 2012 when they went into San Francisco and took the first 2 games. So close to the first NLCS since 1995. But they went back to Cincinnati for the last 3 games, just having to win 1, and they lost all 3. The next year, they were one of the wildcard teams, playing the Pirates in the 1-game playoff, and Francisco Liriano shut them down. 7 years later, they got back to the playoffs, taking on the Braves in the 2020 wildcard series, and they failed to score a run in either of their losses. That includes a 13-inning 1-0 loss in Game 1. So, the last 3 in 2012, 1 in 2013, and 2 in 2020. There's your 6 straight losses. We have a 2-way tie with 7 losses, and we'll start with the Tampa Bay Rays. This only goes back to 2021, that 100-win team playing Boston in the ALDS and dominating Game 1. But then, it all came apart. Boston's offense exploded in Game 2, plating 14 runs, getting a walk-off home run from Christian Vasquez in Game 3, then a walk-off sac fly from Kike Hernandez to win the series. They got back to the playoffs the next 2 years as a wildcard team, but that went about as bad as you can imagine. They got swept in the 2022 wildcard series against Cleveland. That included a 1-0 15-inning Game 2, ending with an Oscar Gonzalez walk-off homer. Then, in 2023, they got swept by the Rangers, being outscored 11-1 over the 2 games despite being at home. And if you look at those 4 wildcard games over the last 2 years, they've scored a total of 2 runs across all of them. 3 to the Red Sox in 2021, 2 to Cleveland in 2022, 2 to Texas in 2023. That's 7 in a row. The other team with 7 is their division rival, the Toronto Blue Jays. Coming off a win to save themselves from a sweep in the 2016 ALCS, the Jays dropped Game 5 to Cleveland and their streak began. They made the playoffs 4 years later, getting swept by the Rays in the 2020 wildcard series, and they would make that a trend. In 2022, they would host both games against the Mariners, but Seattle took them both, including one where the Jays had an 8-1 lead. In 2023, offense was their problem. They went to Minnesota, and they were the ones that finally fell to the Twins. They only scored 1 run over the 2 games, and that's how you end up with 7 losses over 4 years. 1 in 2016 to Cleveland, 2 in 2020 against the Rays, 2 in 2022 against the Mariners, and 2 in 2023 against the Twins. And now, the team with the longest streak at 8 losses, the Baltimore Orioles. After sweeping the Tigers in the 2014 ALDS, they went on to play the Royals, and they battled them hard. They lost Game 1 in extra innings, suffered a 2-run loss in Game 2, then a pair of 2-1 losses to complete the sweep. The elite Royals bullpen in championship form in these games. The Orioles came back 2 years later, going to Toronto to battle the Blue Jays in the 2016 wildcard game, and we all know the story. Buck Showalter didn't bring in Zach Britton, and Edwin Encarnacion walked them off. They entered a long, painful rebuild, and they came back to prominence in 2023, having the best record in the American League. But when they faced off with the Rangers in the ALDS, they fell flat. They lost a low-scoring Game 1, a high-scoring Game 2, and got blasted in Game 3 to get swept and cap their 8th straight loss. 4 in 2014 to the Royals, 1 in 2016 to the Blue Jays, and 3 in 2023 to the Rangers. 8 losses is pretty bad, but they're still not even halfway to the Twins' record. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like. And if you want to see more baseball content like this, please give me a sub. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.